Under the wide Arizona sky, where the wind carried dust and sorrow in equal measure, a cowboy named Jacob Reed rode with the weight of a decision that had already begun to eat him alive. The desert around him was quiet except for the steady rhythm of his horse's hooves against the hard earth. Behind him, the sun was sinking, staining the horizon red, the same red that had colored the wedding paint of the woman he had just left behind. Her name was Aluna. She was Apache, tall, strong, and silent as the moonlight. He had once said her eyes held the calm of an ancient desert storm, but today, he hadn't dared to look into them. He couldn't. He had left her standing beside the stone where they had exchanged vows only 2 nights ago. No note, no explanation, only a single feather placed beside her hand, the same feather she had tied in his hat the day they promised never to part. He told himself he was leaving for her own good, that his world and hers could never stay bound together without blood being spilled. But as he rode farther, his chest felt hollow, and every gust of wind whispered her name through the canyons, Aluna, Aluna. The town of Stillwater was not far, a place that smelled of tobacco, whiskey, and regret. Jacob had come there to find work and peace, but peace was the one thing he would never find. When he entered the saloon, the men looked up from their tables. Some nodded in greeting, others sneered. They all knew what had happened, or thought they did. That Apache gal finally let you go, Reed. One of them laughed. Jacob's hand clenched around his glass. Something like that, he muttered. He didn't tell them that it was him who had walked away, him who had promised her a home and then broken that promise like a cheap bottle. All night he drank, trying to drown the image of her standing alone under the wide moon, but every drop burned his throat with guilt instead of comfort. Out in the desert, Aluna did not cry. Her people were not taught to cry for betrayal. She stood barefoot on the sand, her wedding dress, woven by the hands of her tribe's elder women, fluttering in the wind like a flag of silence. The feather beside her hand told her everything. Jacob had chosen the world of white men over her. She should have hated him, but she didn't. Love, to her, was not a thing that vanished when hurt came. It was a spirit, a fire that burned even when everything else turned cold. Still, she could not stay. She returned to her tribe, her eyes heavy but her step unbroken. When her father, Chief Nanton, saw her, he said nothing. He simply looked at the horizon, then at his daughter's trembling hands. By dawn, the drums of the Apache began to sound, slow, steady, and filled with warning. Jacob woke in the saloon with a pounding head and a heart heavier than iron. The bartender's voice cracked through the morning silence. You hear the news? The Apache rode at dawn. A whole group, armed, angry. Folks say they're looking for a white man who wronged one of their women. Jacob froze. The glass in his hand slipped and shattered. He didn't need anyone to tell him who they were looking for. For a moment, he thought of running again, farther this time, maybe to Texas or the sea. But something inside him stopped him cold. He had run once. He couldn't do it again. Not from her. Not from what he had done. He saddled his horse and rode back into the desert, following the same trail his tracks had marked the night before. The wind had half buried them already, as if nature itself wanted to erase his shame. As he neared the ridge where he had left her, he saw the sign, an Apache war symbol painted in red earth upon the stones. He dismounted, heart hammering. Then he saw them, a line of riders appearing over the dunes, their horses snorting, their spears glinting in the morning sun. At the front was Chief Nanton, his face carved in stone. Behind him rode Aluna, her hair loose, her eyes burning with something deeper than anger, disappointment, sorrow, and strength all at once. Jacob dropped to his knees before them. I came back, he said hoarsely. Not to fight, to face what I've done. The chief dismounted, his shadow falling over Jacob. You gave her your name, Nanton said in a voice like thunder, and you took her heart. In our ways, a man's word is his spirit. You killed something sacred, Cowboy. Jacob nodded, unable to speak. He expected punishment, a spear, an arrow, anything. But Aluna stepped forward, lifting her hand. No, she said quietly. Let me speak. The men stopped. Even the horses stilled. She walked to Jacob, her footsteps slow, deliberate. Why did you leave me? She asked. Her voice was calm, but each word carried the weight of a storm. Was my love not enough? Was my people's trust too heavy for you? Jacob looked up, the desert light blinding his eyes. I was afraid, he said. Afraid they'd hurt you because of me. Afraid I'd never belong in your world. I thought leaving would save you. Aluna's eyes softened, but her face stayed strong. You did not save me, she said. You broke me. And when a man breaks what he loves, he breaks himself too. Jacob lowered his head. I know, he whispered. And I'll do anything to make it right. The chief looked at Aluna. What do you want done? He asked. It was her choice, mercy or revenge. She looked out over the desert where the sun was climbing, painting the world in gold. I want no blood, she said. I want truth. She turned to Jacob. You will not ride away again. You will come to our village. You will work, help our people rebuild the wells the soldiers destroyed, share your hands for our needs. You will live among us until your heart learns the meaning of honor. The warriors murmured among themselves. Some disagreed, but the chief raised his hand. So it shall be, he said. The spirit of forgiveness is greater than the fire of revenge. So Jacob stayed. Days turned into weeks, and the desert began to change around him. He worked under the sun beside the Apache men, carrying stones, digging trenches, hauling water. The tribe watched him carefully, always ready to judge, but slowly, their suspicion softened. He gave food to the children, shared his horse to carry the old, and when the nights grew cold, he sat by their fires, listening to their stories. He learned their words, their songs, their silences. And somewhere between the pain and the labor, he found something that had been missing all his life, belonging. Aluna watched him from afar. She did not speak much to him, not yet. Forgiveness was a road longer than the desert itself. But one evening, as the sun dipped low, she found him sitting by the water he had helped bring back to the dry ground. You stayed, she said softly. Jacob looked up at her, his eyes full of gratitude. You gave me a chance to, he replied. She sat beside him, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her arm. My people see your effort, she said. But they wait for your heart to show. Jacob nodded. My heart's learning, he said. Slow, but honest. She smiled faintly, the first smile he had seen since that day under the red sky. As the seasons changed, Jacob became part of the tribe's rhythm. He hunted with the young men, danced at the fires, and helped build new homes when storms tore the old ones apart. When sickness came through the valley, he rode 2 days to fetch medicine from the white towns, refusing payment, saying only, I owe a life. The tribe began to call him, Taza, meaning, he who mends. The children followed him, when he walked, laughing, tugging at his boots. And one night, when a great flood threatened their camp, Jacob risked his life to save 3 of their horses trapped in the rising river. The current nearly took him, but he emerged alive, clutching the reins, coughing and shivering. Aluna knelt beside him afterward, wrapping a blanket around his shoulders. For the first time in months, she called him by his real name. Jacob, she whispered, the spirits see you. Years passed, and the story of the cowboy who abandoned his Apache bride became something else entirely, the story of the man who stayed, who worked, who earned back the trust he had broken. One spring morning, Chief Nanton called the tribe together. His voice carried over the camp as he said, the man who once brought sorrow has brought honor. He has lived by our code, not as a guest, but as one of us. The people murmured in agreement. Then Nanton turned to Aluna. Daughter, what say you? She looked at Jacob, her eyes steady as the horizon. He left me once, she said, but he returned a better man. The desert forgives those who learn its silence. My heart forgives too. The tribe cheered, their voices rising with the wind. Jacob stood still, eyes wet, unable to speak. Aluna stepped forward, holding a small white feather, the same kind she had once placed in his hat. She placed it in his palm. This time, she said softly, you keep it, not as a promise, but as truth. He looked at her, his chest tight with emotion. I won't leave again, he said. She smiled, her tears glinting like morning dew. You don't need to say it, she replied. You've already stayed. That night, as the tribe danced under the stars, Jacob and Aluna stood side by side, not as strangers of 2 worlds, but as souls who had found each other through pain, work, and redemption. The firelight flickered across their faces, the drums beat like a heartbeat that belonged to both of them now. Jacob looked out over the desert, the same land that had once been the witness of his cowardice, and for the first time, it felt like home. He realized then that love was not in words or vows, but in staying when it was hardest to stay, in building instead of breaking, in listening instead of running. When dawn came again, the desert was quiet, peaceful. The same sun that had once seen betrayal now saw healing. And as the light spilled across the sand, 2 figures rode out together, a cowboy and his Apache bride, no longer divided by fear or pride. Behind them, the tribe watched, not with suspicion, but with pride. For they had taught a man that justice can be fierce, but mercy can change the world. And in that vast golden silence, the desert seemed to whisper its own truth, that love, once lost and found again, becomes the strongest thing a heart can hold.